So this is a very interesting topic. Large models versus micro models. Is bigger always better? First of all, I got to ask, why are you two here talking about this topic? Why you? Okay, you first.
Well,
Go ahead,
we
Alex.
have a biotechnology company that discovers new medicines with large models and also smaller models. We are trying to shorten the drug discovery cycle from 10 years to 7 or 6. So that's the goal.
How about you?
So we at AppliedAI are focused on the application of AI to industry, and it's about kind of the business results that AI generates. So we make these calls every day on what's better suited, a large model, a small model, what kind of model. I have a lot of thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, so let's get to that. So you have somebody that comes to you and say, this is what I'd like to create.
Yeah.
And are they determining, do they think just one size fits all? And you say, well, there is a difference here, large versus micro. How do you explain those two distinctions for those who are not familiar with that?
Yeah. So what we often do is we kind of ask the question, what's your electricity plan? And they say, well, we don't have an electricity plan. We say, yeah, you shouldn't necessarily have an AI plan. You should have a business plan. You should focus on what the business outcomes that you want to accomplish. And electricity just powers everything. And we think it's the same with AI. AI for AI's sake isn't always the answer. There has to be a tangible business result or outcome that you want to achieve. And then once you have that, agnostic of large models or small models, once that is very clear, then we start looking into the best tooling for it. And one point that we've seen on this topic is our minds think very linearly, and the rapid change we've seen, in the past year alone is outstanding. But we believe that the kind of this topic is very temporal in the sense that the large model of today is the small model of tomorrow.
What do you mean? Are you saying OpenAI and what they're doing with ChatGPT, it's going to be a
it'll be
a micro?
There's a 70 billion parameter model right now. There will be a 700 billion parameter model in a few years. So just the idea and definition of large versus small is just based on where we are today, and the real question should always be, what's the business outcome that you want to achieve? The rest is just tooling.
So, Alex, how do you define large versus micro? Give me that 4x4 or 8x8 or whatever it is. What's the large versus micro?
Well, in our space, in biology and chemistry, large, everything that starts with 500 million parameters. If it is below that, it's probably a smaller purpose-built model that is like solving a specific task, a challenge, generates a molecule, generates a hypothesis why the disease happens in a specific patient, what is the target that we can modulate to cure the disease. So smaller models, they work well, and smaller models, they don't need to know Shakespeare to make a prediction. They just need to understand the biology. So the training set is smaller.
Yeah.
And what we see in terms of performance, smaller models actually performing well. And they work really well in pair with large models when they are used as a reinforcement learning agents that score the output from large models and train it, help with the training process.
So in the healthcare pharmaceutical space, give me one example of where you applied large model versus a micro or a small model.
Yeah, we have a platform called Chemistry 42 that is a state-of-the-art platform for generative chemistry. So we design new molecules, drugs, medicines from scratch. It's like AI imagination. So you imagine new structures. So within that model, within that platform, we have over 40 generative models. Most of them are small models, purpose-built, specifically designed to generate representation of chemical structure. But we've also recently launched a larger model in partnership with NVIDIA. We called it a Natch Zero series, And the recent version of that model is a multimodal. It has over 1 billion parameters, and it can solve 38 different tasks and work on multiple representations of chemical space. So what we've shown with Chemistry 42 platform is that we can go from 5 years, what it typically takes for a drug discovery process from 0 to human clinical trials. We can do it in 18 months. So at least 3 times speed up and higher precision in terms of molecular generation.
Mm-hmm. Give me an example in your client set of where large versus small, and how did you help them make that decision?
Our platform is called Opus, which stands for Orchestration Platform for Universal Services. And what we do is essentially, once we understand the business goal, which we call intention, like what is it that you want to do? And imagine a world where you get whatever you want immediately. What matters is what you want. Our partner with that is McKinsey, and we go and define the business intention, which is what's the job you want to get done. And then we will generate an industrial grade workflow with a mixture of AI agents and human agents, kind of business process re-engineering for to attain that outcome. Now, we think this is a major CapEx that companies need, because when you give somebody a blank canvas, again, thinking linearly, you end up rebuilding your old process and kind of having changes that are incremental. So once that's done, then each, what we call task, is made up of multiple AI agents. And these are autoregressive models that we use. It's kind of LLM agnostic. So for that particular task, we use the best model out there. For a few of them, they're large models. An example we spoke about earlier is, for the majority of objectives, using a large language model is like using an A380 to transport a mouse.
An A380 to transport a mouse.
Yeah, there's these huge models and expense, and there was a whole study on the kind of hundreds of millions of dollars spent, by just please and thank yous that we give LLM models, because those are input tokens that then become output tokens because they refer to them. So once you have the workflow designed,
high cost, low return.
Exactly, and once you have that design, then you think about what are your constraints. So we think when you should use a small model is when you want, for example, very high security around something. So these models around 7 million parameters or even less can be run on edge devices that are air-gapped by the internet. So if you're something that's highly sensitive, if you're in the government or medical records or anything of that nature, you can use a small model that is cheaper and faster on a. Let's focus for a second.
What is cheaper?
Good question.
Yeah, give me some numbers around what's considered to be cheaper or in the small model space.
So,
I'm your client, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, you should go small. Well,
yeah.
what does that mean to me?
So we spend a lot of time thinking about price.
Right.
And how do you price AI and the value that you're receiving? How we do it is a little bit controversial, or we think first principles.
Be controversial.
Once we have the workflow, we estimate how many man hours that would have taken in 2019 in the kind of old world. And then we think that for labor to compete in a post-AI world, for some reason, we agreed to unitize work by time. And you're either paid by the hour, you sell an hour, and we think that is not the metric that should be relevant in the future, because labor cannot compete with AI when it's time-based. So we think it should be output-based pricing. So you're paying, let's say, 15 man hours for this insurance claim to be done. And then when you look internally, say, how much was I paying for those man hours? The average price globally for knowledge work is around $18 a man hour. We charge you $1.50 a man hour. So you get the same, and the concept how we ended up with this was, His Excellency Omar had mentioned the automobiles and how we had to shift our mentality with an engine around horses. And you know, we had all the regulation that you mentioned earlier around a guy waving a flag, but we also had, you know, the first cars for sale had these spec sheets of billions of parameters or cylinders and RPM, and nobody understood what that meant. What is an RPM? What is a 8-cylinder? What is a 12-cylinder? If you're not a fanatic of automobiles. Until somebody invented the metric horsepower, right? So all of a sudden, like, oh, wait a minute. If this is 15 horsepower, how much do I pay for 15 horses? That's my price. And the saving with this car is these horses are cheaper. And we think the metric we're using is man hours.
Got it. So what's the number?
Around 90%.
About 90%.
Yeah. But we think that the productivity per human will increase by 10x. So the good news is we're still relevant as humans. We call it supervised automation because a human needs to sign to assume the liability. So if you save 90% on the insurance claim, but you do around 10x more, then the human ends up with the same salary.
Yeah. So Alex, build on that as you're both going back and forth. And by the way, please feel free to speak. Don't let me, you know, we're having coffee, right? Alex, for you, what's the cost differential? You gave me parameter differential earlier when you think of large versus small.
It's a good question. I mean, we have different business models. The value in pharma industry is always in a molecule. So the molecule that you discover with AI is where the value is. So a single molecule that has completed phase 2 can be worth 5 billion plus royalties, right? So it's the centerpiece of value. Beyond that, you can extract value, revenue from the use of the model. So once you roll it out, you can charge your clients like for a subscription marketplace. Like Amazon has a great marketplace for models, AWS Marketplace. We're planning to roll out our Edge01 in this marketplace within a week or so. And to fine-tune Edge01 is going to cost like a user $8 an hour to fine-tune and use Edge01 vet model. So it kind of democratizes drug discovery and model training. So you can fine-tune any, like using any proprietary data. So it really depends on the kind of on the task, on the chemistry side. And as a model as a service, it's $8 an hour. That's kind of the baseline that we have. We also have a software business where we sell our platform as a SaaS platform for chemistry that you do. And this depends by, in terms of like academia, industry, like what type of user and organization you are. For academia, we have practically at cost a subscription price that basically covers the compute we spend in kind of in the duration of the use of the platform. So yeah, depends on application type.
When you think about, because we're obviously talking about one size does not fit all, right? And the segmentation of a solution. We happen to be in this conversation talking about large versus small versus micro. What is the next segmentation in this space when you're thinking about AIs and the way that businesses and organizations and governments will be implementing in the coming 2 years? We're about to see a lot of innovation in terms of, and I was talking about this earlier on stage, the very debate about what to call wrappers versus apps and whether they're really just they're wrappers, right? Yet that is changing now. They're becoming more robust. They're becoming, if you will, super wrappers, and depending on the context or words you might use. What is the next segmentation past large versus small or micro?
So I'll borrow a quote from Bezos in the kind of beginning of the internet revolution, because we're forming the canon of what it means to value these things. And he said, I'm not sure how the internet will play out, but I do know that people will always want things cheaper, faster, and better. So I think the large model, small model, or micro model, one element of that is cost. So as Alex mentioned, how do I optimize the ROI around the outcome that I want to receive? Is this an A380 that I need for this task? About 80% of the prompts or things that we want to get done are done with LLMs today. Like even if we get to GPT-10, it'll only for things that Alex does that are highly specialized.
And it'll cost you $10,000 a month.
Yeah. So
I'm joking, but go ahead.
the
Yeah.
price per token
Yeah.
will rapidly decline.
Yeah.
And I think almost to zero over time because there's like 500 billion of capex going into building compute. So I think that'll decline. So one is cost. The other element is accuracy. Or kind of like is it giving me what I want? And large models do have the advantage of if you know Shakespeare and you ask a question about an article you want to write, it can refer to that. So the horizontal big platforms have a little bit of an advantage on knowing things, but do you really need that? What you want? If the kind of utility of that will drop over time. So accuracy, I think, will become also a commodity for at least 80% of things that we do. So the third thing, which I think will be the defining choice maker on large versus micro, is security. And I think if you're highly sensitive about your data and if it's training other models, or if it's leaving your system, then you'd go for a small one that's air gapped that you host locally on your edge device, and nothing leaves. So large, medium, small, all that matters at the end of the day, I think, is what's your security tolerance and requirement. And obviously, the higher it is, the more the cost, the more you're willing to invest.
Alex, what's the next segmentation?
I think like the future, I agree 100% with Arya that it's going to be commoditized. LLMs, they're already, you can make a point, they're like commoditized to an extent. I think the next like segmentation frontier would be domain-specific purpose-built models, and a lot of value will go into data, proprietary data generation and application layers, where you show like the differentiation from like the rest of the industry. And from commoditized LLMs, you need your output to be highly precise, accurate, tractable when it comes to the industry you're working on. So yeah, I think the centerpiece for the future is going to be domain-specific, purpose-built models, and maybe new architectures beyond transformers. Transformers still have limitations when it comes to the context window, to the like many areas, computational resources required. There are many like modern architectures in development right now, kind of R&D stage, that overcome those limitations. So we'll see.
So you're saying here, Alex, as we go down this road of different segments, and we were just, again, doing large versus small, just looking at small and even localized or specialized, it goes back to the absence or the existence of the data that allows these localized, specialized, segmented micro or small models will now absolutely depend upon. That's not out there right now, potentially. The data sets that are required for them to survive, to thrive.
I think the future is going to be domain-specific foundation models that can be fine-tuned dynamically every day using reinforcement learning towards specific task. You receive any feedback from the client, your model is retrained, you're getting more accurate. Like ChatGPT is doing it right now with human feedback within the app. Is going to be done on the foundation model level in different businesses.
Talk about data sets.
Yeah. So to address one thing on kind of where it's going to go in the future.
Yeah.
I think it may end up being a hybrid model, where we saw this happen with DeepSeek, where they had a mixture of experts approach, where one LLM is just a amalgamation of multiple small language models, SLMs. And when you ask it a prompt, it will then route that prompt and what it needs to whether it needs a large language model. What's the compute budget? It will kind of ascertain for what you want to get done. If it's one domain in particular that is very research, it will allocate the compute within the hardware, right? Like with NVIDIA, I think they're building a lot of stuff where it will just use that expert in that domain, that small model or micro model, to answer your question, and not burden our kind of AI infrastructure or electricity infrastructure, bringing it all back with the kind of A380 response. So eventually, I think we will just use a model, and the allocation of small, large, micro will be kind of need-based on the other side.
You brought to mind, I remember I was at Davos this year, and DeepSeek launched, as you all remember, and then the big debate, at least on my sister network at CNBC, was, all right, so the large language models, are they overly largely valued at that time? And you saw how the markets had reacted. Address the
largely valued language models.
Overly largely valued is what I was saying. Address that very nature today based on what we have seen since that. And it's not too long. We're just talking about January and the amount of capital that is going one way or another into the major LLMs right now. Alex, you start first on the valuations that we're seeing, especially when we look at large versus small.
Yeah, I think that the trend is evident. So we have trend towards more efficiency, cheaper LLMs, and go into different architectures and domain-specific foundation models. This trend will continue. We are at Insilico, we are also striving to make our platform as fast and efficient as possible because we're selling the SaaS and model as a service, those business models, and. DeepSeek has shown that no matter how hard you try to restrict someone from doing something, you will probably only succeed in motivating somebody to just to do it anyway. I think in healthcare, at least, we hope for global collaboration because everybody is prone to dying from disease or from old age, right? And humans have figured out how to convert time into money, but have not figured out how to convert money into time, right? So we still age and we still get sick. So I think now is a kind of important moment, inflection point, where you can start making attempts at converting money into time, getting into longevity space, and aging research space, so people live longer and healthier.
And Arya, quickly here, so are foundation models overvalued, and is there enough capital to go around regardless of whether they are or not? So
I'll try and be as unbiased as possible, obviously, not talking
you are
about
who
my
you are.
own stuff. But looking at it objectively, trying to at least, and it depends on investment horizon, but my view is that I think AI is massively underhyped. Massively, by a factor of 1,000.
Underhyped.
Yes.
By 1,000.
And this, if this is being filmed, you can play the reel when it crashes. But I think even when that happens, it's a matter of time. So if you had invested at the peak of the internet bubble, when the internet was overhyped, you would have 30x your money. So peak internet hype was also peak clarity. It was Peter Thiel who said that internet will change everything. And it did. It just took 15 years. And I think we have peak clarity now that AI will change every industry, every sector, every geography, every business. It's just who are the winners, who are the losers. So from an index perspective, massively underhyped, there will be casualties. And we think focusing on the application layer of the real business value and not investing in a lot of the commodity infrastructure. You purposely said that at the end, so I cannot do a follow-up question. I know that. Thank you so much, Arya Bolurfrushan, as well as Alex Aliper. Thank you so much.